So first and foremost, after now the world premiere of your new film, I have to ask this question: how do you get to say yes, use our space for your film? Because this film it's a serious. It's serious and it's funny, but it's asking serious questions about faith and what that means, particularly at this point in time. And sometimes organized power structures, they don't cotton too kindly to things that are going to question about what resonance and what relevance they have. And so I'm interested in, like, how did you take this first and foremost to the people of that church and say, like, hey, here's what I want to do?
Yeah. Well, my friend Andrew Shemin, by the way, so we're live now and everyone can see. We're not live, but everyone can. I want to thank the Chattanooga Film Festival for. I'm sorry to get that out of the way, but I want to thank them for showing and premiering the movie. We're really honored, and and if you watch the movie, thank you for watching. I really appreciate that. Andrew Shemin, my friend Andrew Shemin, who shot the movie and is one of the producers on the film, he lives in the rectory beside the church, which is near Hell's Kitchen in New York. It's a beautiful church. He's in the rectory there with 6 or 7 other Catholic men who go through the rituals every week and whatnot, and who attend the service. They're part of the church, actually. They live beside of the church. And Andrew, he reached out to me and said, look, we've got a church we can shoot a movie in if you ever have an idea. And I'm like, wow, that's great. I'm always looking for, great opportunities and whatnot. So that's how it started. The church was there. Andrew has got a really nice red helium camera that we use. And it started off with a simple email saying, I live beside of a church. I've got a camera. Warner, I'm a fan of your films. Let's make a short film in the church. And I'm like, I'd rather make a feature film and let me just gestate and think about the ideas that come. And then Andrew is very devout Catholic. He's a Catholic polymath. He knows, he's a genius about the Old Testament, the New Testament. And we started taking walks around the city and talking about faith and religion and how his belief system which I found fascinating. I'm from North Carolina, a small Baptist town in North Carolina. So when you grow up in a Baptist town, religion is part of your upbringing and whatnot, in terms of, at least philosophically, you know what I mean? I would attend Baptist churches on Sundays, and never got saved, but that was a big part of the cultural conversation, so to speak. So that's kind of how it began. Andrew said, "We got a church. I got a camera. Let's make a movie." And I'm like, "Oh, I'd love to." And then we started bouncing around ideas and talking about it. And then the film came. And then when the pandemic hit, it felt like the best opportunity to do it then, because the church, no one was coming in the church, you know what I mean? Because it was closed. So we felt like it was a good opportunity to take advantage of the fact that it was closed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and
then we had to get permission from, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jay. We had to get permission from the George Rutler, Father Rutler, who is kind of the main priest of the church, or whatever that, the name of diocese. Yeah. So I'm not good about the language and the nomenclature or whatnot. Andrew Shemin was indispensable for all the technical aspects of the talking about the specific things about the Old Testament, New Testament, and that kind of thing. So yeah, we had to get his permission. He had to read the script and approve it, and and he gave us his blessing. And so we're very grateful in that regard, And we knew we wanted to challenge some of the ideas of the belief a little bit. We didn't want it to be like everything was positive, because everything is subject to criticism, especially the church. So we wanted to challenge it a little bit in a dime store, superficial kind of way. We couldn't get too deep into the criticisms, but I thought it was a nice balance of positive and darkness and whatnot, and questioning things. So yeah.
That's the thing. Well, Chris Dortch, the executive director of the Chattanooga Film Festival, he emailed me one night. He's like, "Jason, I got a film I need you to take a look at." And I was just like, "Send it my way." And I watched this in the middle of the night, and it was the first time that I felt like, because we've had like all sorts of different kinds of pandemic art, and this was the first time that I was just like, well, this is something that's really digging in on the issues that are like that are knocking around inside of my head. So I was just completely blown away. I have to say, though, it's fascinating. I watched it again just because I didn't want to embarrass myself in this situation.
No, are you kidding me? Thank you for watching it once. Twice is beautiful.
No, I mean, like I live for that. I love for any serious minded drama about religion and what it means. Like I just appreciate that effort because you don't get those kind of films anymore. You'll get like the gut bucket, like Rapture, Left Behind kind of movie.
Yeah.
You'll get the like toothless, like just the things that you always see, like the I don't want to say has-beens because that's really judgmental, but the people who've had better days in the Hollywood system, who are just like starring in like an inspirational story about people who learn to play sports with like weird children or something like that.
Yeah, sure, of course.
That, but then the previous to this, like the last film I can say that like really just sort of like reached into the skull and shook the goo around was First Reformed. And I think this is operating on that kind of level, coming from a different tradition. But yeah, it was just,
I wish I could write 1/10 as brilliantly as Paul Schrader, you know what I mean? But that's really beautiful comparison. Thanks.
No.
And we talked about that movie, when we were making the film. But yeah, keep going if you want to. Yeah.
It's one of the questions that I had was it does such a good job of covering so many different emotional situations because it starts with with Kevin fucking Corrigan, who is a treasure.
Yeah.
That I mean, he's just like I'm really surprised the Star Trek people haven't tried to get him to play like a Vulcan patriarch.
God, he could play anything, but he'd be amazing doing that. Yeah.
He's got those Vulcan eyebrows. It would be amazing. Yeah. But let's put it out in the universe. Hope that happens. But it starts like with a very small group of people, and then it sort of expands outwards. And I was just like, oh, okay. The idea of this film is spreading like a virus, but a benevolent one. And as it just keeps spreading out, and then the moment that it clicked, and watching it the second time, absolutely. So is when Casella's meets up with the lady. And they have that like just incredibly lacerating scene where she's just like, "Here's the world, gotta go, bye," and then immediately following it up with the man who's insisting on being baptized, which is the most like you don't expect a confrontation with the nature of human evil quite like that.
Yeah.
And it just sort of like it like blindsides you, but it fixes the core of the film, and then from that you see how everything else is sort of. Not evolving around, like radiating out from it.
Well, yeah. I mean, unless you have a specific question, I can speak to those things you just mentioned.
Please do.
When you talk about starting with one person and it kind of expanding like a virus, the film, and you mentioned Kevin Corrigan. I mean, that is literally how the film started. Was I thought we have the church. We have a pandemic happening. I'm sure a lot of New York actors aren't working at the moment, and I want to try to get a film made. And I thought, who do I know who's brilliant and who might be willing to do this, go on this adventure with us and make a movie in the church, right? I want to make sure my levels on this audio are okay. And so I wrote Father Andrew for Kevin Corrigan. And the idea was I called Kevin and I said, Kevin, listen, if I got a script idea and I want to write the script for you, and if you like the script, are you willing to do it? And he said, I'm up for making a film during the pandemic if I like the script. So that was all I needed. That was the kind of the green light to inspire me. I'd already written a couple of church scripts for this church, for the church that we couldn't make during the pandemic, and I thought I want to scale it down and make a smaller version. So I wrote the script for Kevin Corrigan, sent it to him, and the idea was if I get Kevin Corrigan to sign on, then this thing will evolve and it will grow and we'll get other actors to sign on as well. That's the hardest part about getting an independent film made is getting actors to commit to it. Sometimes you have to get the actors to commit and they won't commit unless there's money to the project. You can't get money unless the actors commit. So it's just kind of like, it's a difficult thing because it's a catch-22 or it's gridlock. You can't have one without the other. So Kevin loved the script, wanted to do it, play Father Andrew. And after he was attached, I went to Max Casella and said, Max, Kevin, I've got a script for Kevin. Kevin wants to do it. Will you play this other part? He said, Kevin's on board. I'm on board. I'll do it. He didn't even read the script. Thomas J. Ryan, we went to him, same thing. Max Casella now is on board, and Kevin. So it kept evolving. We've got two people attached. Thomas J. Ryan's like, I'll do it. We got three. the trifecta of brilliant actors, the holy trinity of great actors is what I kind of to joke about. How we've got these three brilliant, kind of underused, undervalued, underrated actors who are brilliant, as good as anybody on any level. So once we got those three actors, it was really quite easy to get other actors attached. I mean, we went to some actors who were nervous about the pandemic and they were nervous about the virus, but it started to grow. So that was kind of how the whole thing kind of started to branch out. Now, regarding the scene where Matt Cassell is with his girlfriend and she starts questioning the nature of religion and how the pandemic is maybe a coup fostered by nature, that to me is the beginning of like the darker half of the movie. You got the first third of the movie, which talks about the virus and the pandemic and opening the church. The second act of the movie is actually them opening the church to the people and the different scenes, the confession scene, the prayer, other prayer scenes and whatnot. And then, you got that third act that's a little bit darker, and it starts with the girlfriend questioning the nature of things. Then going into the sinner who wants to be baptized, which to me is Craig Bierko steals the show. Everybody's brilliant in the movie, but that scene's so terrific. So, it was that scene wasn't originally supposed to be in the movie The Sinner. You know what I mean? As we started reaching out to actors, Craig Bierko he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting ready to make a movie. He's like, well, I'd like to be in your movie. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, I'll write you a scene. And I ended up writing the sinner scene for him. And after we wrote the sinner scene, the confession of Father James, Thomas J. Rhine's character, that was written too. It wasn't part of the original script. So I like to continue writing and rewriting as we're in production. I'm kind of all over the place. So let me know if that kind of hit onto some of the things you were talking about.
Oh no, absolutely. And and that makes sense because like a lot of times it's David Cronenberg always said, I never storyboard until I see the sets, because like once you're on there and working with people, then you have to evolve from there. You can't treat this as an untouchable thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see all the variables in play.
And when you have a low budget film, a lot of times you are at the whim of your setting. When I write scenes in a movie, a low budget movie, which all my movies are low budget, I keep the descriptions of the settings extremely minimal. You know what I mean? I don't really describe the furniture in detail or the things on the walls or the color of the floor or the furniture, because we usually don't have the production design budget to craft a color scheme. We have to kind of find locations that fit our budget. Or in the case of the church, such a beautiful church that anywhere you put the camera, it was just a really nice shot. You know what I mean? And we weren't trying to get extremely cinematic with it. We just didn't have the bandwidth. We had a really small crew of like 8 people, and like the camera department was 3 people. So we couldn't do dolly shots or anything like that. So we locked everything down just to keep it quiet and just to keep it conservative in terms of the photography, and it allowed the performances to really be the star of the movie, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a unique and interesting film, and I appreciate it. I definitely think it's going to be like when the history of this moment in time is written, I think it will definitely be remembered as like one of the more adventurous pieces of pandemic art.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, Jason. Are you faithful yourself, religious, Catholic or Baptist or Christian or
I always
Muslim? I mean,
that my religious affiliation is magical realist moviegoer.
Yeah.
Because going to the movies is like church for me.
Absolutely, 100%.
I was raised Methodist. My mother's a retired minister, so it's like I have that tradition. Anytime I'm having a spiritual crisis or have questions, call up my mom. It's very cool, like not having to deal with like the bureaucracies and stuff. And that actually that brings up a question that I had about the sort of the way that the film unfolds, is that it reveals how much of the pandemic and just life in general are series of negotiations with bureaucracies, and sometimes those are completely internal, just like you saying to yourself, do I feel like wearing a mask today? Am I to that point or not? Mm-hmm. Or like dealing with like power structures above you. And it's fascinating how like once you see that, you see all the various characters, how each of them are sort of approaching those questions as well.
Yeah, and and the Max Casella character who plays Paul, he's the kind of the guy in the middle. He hasn't really chosen Christianity, he hasn't chosen atheism. He's kind of agnostic, but he isn't really sure what his belief system is. He's asking a lot of questions. He's prodding. He's inquisitive, and because he's not quite sure. He's searching for something. He is absolute in the one thing at the beginning of the movie, of course, for everyone who's seen it. It's like he's absolute that there's a soul and then there's an afterlife. And people have their convictions. Christians, strong Christians, are absolutely unequivocally Jesus was the Son of God, and you have to believe him to go to hell. I mean, there's variations of that, obviously, iterations. But and they're unwavering with that, and that's great. People can have their unwavering conviction. That's great. You should have conviction. But Paul, I think what's interesting is Paul is agnostic. He's not quite sure what's out there, like a lot of people, probably like myself. I'm more like the Paul character. But he is unwavering in his belief that there is a soul because he's seen the soul leave the body. And because he's seen the soul leave the body, he is absolutely sure that means the life will continue. And when he gets the knowledge that he's been craving his whole life, which is, what does that feel like? How orgiastic and amazing is that going to feel when my soul leaves my body? He's not happy with the knowledge that he's found.
No, it sends him back off the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was so to me that's the nature of knowledge is like it's the whole tree of biting in the tree of we've been better off if the apple had not been eaten. You know what I mean? Like, we better off in the Garden of Eden thinking, look, we're just live here in splendor without like the corruptibility of knowledge or knowing too much. It's an interesting thing to me, because I consider myself not a very curious person, but I'm open to all modes of thinking and all belief systems in a lot of ways. But I feel like what is there to I don't know. Like, you can't really trust anything, and then I don't know. Like, I maybe because I'm intellectually lazy or something. I mean, I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly searching for things, but I don't. I'm not inspired. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyway, before I dig a hole for myself, Paul is me. I am Paul, And at the end of that movie, when he's crying on the beach and he's saying, "I don't want to die," that's me, and that's kind of what this movie is about. Like, ultimately, what the pandemic is a fear of death. I think, or being faced with the fear of death. My mother just died recently, a couple of months ago, which is very sad. And thank you very much. But the movie, I was very close to my mother. I love her dearly. And the movie, it's about the priest losing Father Brooks, you know what I mean, and like them dealing with the grief of that, and Father James being angry. But the movie has such a more meaning to me now, you know what I mean? Like, I was writing it for myself last year, but now when I watch it, I feel like some of the themes, I connect with the themes in a different way now, you know what I mean? It's also it's a love letter to New York and how much I love New York and how sad it is, because a big part of New York is, even though New York is constantly changing with gentrification, wealth coming in, pushing, poor middle class people out, you see restaurants and businesses falling all the time, bookstores closing, a lot of the things that make New York the cultural, melting pot that it is, cesspool, whatever you want to call it. A lot of these things, it's constantly changing and is very dynamic. But what makes New York so amazing to me, and I think a lot of people will agree, it's the people who are here. You know what I mean? Like, the people. Yeah, there's a commonality. There's a shared kind of madness and everybody, like that, being there in the city with everybody, talking to people, being right sandwiched together is what makes the city so, to me, electrifying and inspiring. But to have that taken away during the pandemic was very sad. I mean, and it happened everywhere. But, in the South, the people in the South are amazing. Of course, I'm from North Carolina. I spend a lot of time there. I love the South. I love Tennessee. You have a little more space. People get together, of course, constantly, but you have a little more space. And I don't know. I mean, so the movie was a kind of a mix of a lot of things. Me, whatever. I like to write based on my own neuroses, my own fears, the own things that I'm dealing with at the time. Mm-hmm. And the pandemic was a chance for us to embrace all of our neuroses and make a film out of that, and we were all very grateful for the opportunity. We were scared too, a little bit, but, the crew was very small, so it wasn't like it was a 40 or 50 person crew. It was a tiny crew, so we tried to keep things very safe in that regard. I'm all over the place, Jason, so feel free to interrupt me anytime you want.
I like hearing filmmakers talk. you know,
Yeah.
that's how you find out the really interesting things. And it's just, one of the other things that your film does is it made the New Yorker in me like very like nostalgic. I lived there from 93 to 97, and I go back every year for the film festival at Lincoln Center. And
Oh,
then,
nice.
last year I didn't because everything was virtual, and I was just like, it was like the first year not going back since 93. And it was like I could feel my batteries draining, and like, you're never hurting for New York cinema. There's always something somewhere, but your
Yeah.
film was the first one that I was just like, okay, I can exhale on that. It's such a weird feeling that to tie your emotions directly or indirectly to a physical space. But what you're talking about how the strength of New York is all those people mushed together, because like you have to treasure your space more because there's less of it. Like, you have to value that time and space when you're by yourself. And I feel like that mentality is sort of the current that goes through a lot of the great kind of that cinema. And I'm just in awe by your film. I really am. It's like,
Oh, thanks.
because it's a serious journey. Like, you cover just about every emotional state you can think of outside of like, oh, is that a murderer behind the wall? You don't have that, and you don't have like giant animal attacks, but pretty much everything else is there, and I'm in awe of that.
Thank you. We want, I have a love of the macabre, and I have a love of the bad guy and the nihilist. I made a movie called The Misogynist years ago, just about insane people in a hotel room. A lot of my movies have a lot of nihilism and cynicism and darkness. So I still had to scratch that itch a little bit with the sinner scene. You know what I mean? And I also, to me, the question that's always baffled me about salvation was the idea that how could, taking Jesus to be your, I think I'm all about forgiveness. I think forgiveness is a great thing. And that's one of the most beautiful tenets of Christianity, I think is lovely, is the ability to forgive. But then you have a quandary there. You have a philosophical problem when you talk about, the person who lives an exemplary life, who doesn't take Jesus Christ as a savior. What's his afterlife look like compared to the person who's done terrible things, but taking Jesus as a savior and basically is saved. So to me, that I've always wrestled with that quandary, the idea that some people can live good lives and not be saved. Some people can be the worst human beings on the planet and be saved. And I couldn't avoid that. I felt like the movie was a great opportunity to address that. And what's interesting is it wasn't in the first screenplay, because when I was writing the screenplay, it was coming from a place of, okay, we're all cloistered, kind of like the monks were, you know what I mean? Like, we're all cloistered by ourselves, dealing with our own dread and solitude. I want to write something expansive about unification, about embracing people and bringing people together. So cynicism wasn't part of that when I was initially writing. But as I kept doing rewrites and new drafts, the realist in me creeped in, Life is not just a romantic notion of like, belief that everything's going to be okay. We're still living in a world of sinners and of, questioning everything, and skeptics and whatnot. So I wanted to throw in different belief systems, like astral projection or paganism. And so I wanted to throw that stuff in there just to, so that people that weren't Catholics or believers themselves could enjoy the movie. I think it's the kind of movie that Christians will enjoy, and agnostics will enjoy, and atheists will enjoy. And that's what we were trying to do, So.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and it's rare that you get films that address how sometimes the idea of forgiveness gets weaponized. The way that, like, I see a lot of like the more extreme factions in the modern evangelical movement. I feel they sort of like that they see Christianity as sort of this zero-sum thing where they have a cosmic get-out-of-jail-free card, so it just renders everything else completely irrelevant. But actually, jumping aside of that, getting to astral projection, how did you, when you're writing this, how did you first visualize that representing like someone's soul leaving their body? Because it's such an inspired visual choice, and I was just like, there's like 77 different ways you could do that, and I want to know what sort of brought you to that.
I always saw it as like a kind of a glistening kind of ball of energy coming out of the body. It was never going to be like a body or anything like that, like a disembodied soul. It was always just like a little ball of energy. And when I started talking to the CG effects guy, Mazyar Sharafin, who was very interested in astral projection, he saw it as just a little dot, just kind of just like it leaves the body, just a little pulsing dot. And I thought that's interesting, but I want it to be more visual. I just want there to be a tail, make it like a comet. Just kind of because then we could do that cheaply. It doesn't take a ton of time. We don't have the money, and it will look good. It won't look hokey because it'll be so simple. And Mazyar is extremely talented and extremely. He just has a great work ethic, and he's just a very creative person, a very excitable person, which is what you want making an independent film or any creative project. So, it was like, look, let's just take that pulsing ball and put a little, tail on it. And that was kind of the way I visualized it in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? And then, and I did a Google search and looked up things, and, there are lots of different iterations of the body leaving. It could have been like, the body itself glowing, but like we just didn't have the money for that. And I also thought it was too much, you know what I mean? And
yeah, well, you don't want to all of a sudden become a big effects movie like in the last 10 minutes.
But I think that because the movie is so small and intimate, that the fact that there's any kind of special effects at the end that I think are very credible and really well done, I think gives the movie a real kind of boost in production value and whatnot. I love the idea, because I love New York, of having a montage of the different like landmarks in New York, and just seeing a disembodied soul, kind of just traveling around the city. I just thought that was it would be a beautiful kind of montage. And when we did the montage and I did the original edit, I put some kind, before Michael Montez did the score, I put some kind of sprightly piano music behind it, kind of it's kind of just kind of sprightly and fun, jazzy, like New York. And then, Montez was like, well, he starts drinking at the end of the movie. He's not in a good place when his soul leaves the body. Like, it should be melancholic. It should be like, it should be a sad song. And I didn't agree with him at first, but then he sold me on it. And I just think that song is so lovely when the soul is drifting through the city, because it's way more melancholic, and it's way more. I'm just looking at the audio to make sure it's recording. It's way just more melancholic and sad, and I think that's what conveys what's happening. Even though it looks like he's having a great time when the soul's drifting around, I think what the idea is that he feels kind of dead in the sky. Somebody told a friend of mine once told me he did the drug ayahuasca. Do you know what ayahuasca is?
Yeah.
It's like a Mayan kind of herb or whatever, powder or something. It's supposed to lead to psychedelic kind of experiences. And he said when he took it, he felt like his soul was drifting into space, into the cosmos, and his body was back on Earth, and he was drifting through the cosmos. And I thought, that sounds amazing. How did it feel? And I was curious to hear what he thought. And he's like, I felt like I was just dead. I felt like I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pain. I felt nothing. And it sounded awful in a lot of ways. So that was part of the inspiration behind that, was this idea that, it looked like this ball of energy that was so alive, twirling around the Empire State Building, but inside there's no feeling at all, just a deadness, which I think you kind of can achieve drinking alcohol, or anytime I've been really, really blitzed. It feels like I feel like, oh, I'm kind of out of my body. I don't feel the pain of being a human being. And I kind of feel alive and in the moment, but then the next day I'm like, I don't remember really much of anything. So it's kind of like being dead in the moment, like not really being alive, because you're like, I'm experiencing this now drunk, but tomorrow I'm not going to remember it. So it's like, what is this? Like, if you drink, if you get really, really wasted, it's kind of a similar experience. It's kind of sad, even though at the time it feels like you're alive and having a great time, because you're extricated. Anytime I get really wasted, it's like I'm escaping the pain, escaping my neuroses, but it's not a good thing necessarily. So I wanted Paul's drinking to be part of that, aspect. Again, I'm Paul. That's me, so.
But it's fascinating that whole reconciliation of that, like, the soul freed from the body can attain all these heights, but it's got to go back into the body. It's like the Cathar theology of where the body is a prison, and
No.
the mind and the body are at war for the, and that like death is a transcendence, and it's just sort of like there's so much going on in this, and I I feel like this film is going to get taught in like grad school level divinity school classes.
That's so nice.
Which is a very specific, but I think very accurate, because it's dealing with issues that anyone trying to like make a spiritual difference needs to understand and needs to deal with. I think.
Oh, that's very, very nice. Again, Andrew Shemin, the polymath Catholic, who was one of the producers, for all the stuff that's really specific in the minutia about like the Old Testament, Judaism and the connection of Old Testament to New Testament and stuff, all that stuff, like he and I would send emails back and forth. I would send him 40 questions in a 3-page email. He would send me back a 10-page email with all these things answered, and also saying, look, there's no... Some people of the Talmud believe this. Some people of the Torah believe this. So, evangelicals of the New Testament believe this. Like a constant stream of information that I would use, synthesize, and kind of write some of the scenes with. But a lot of the stuff that, like the astral projection scenes, like the conversation of Father James talking about the end of the world, and if the end of the world was happening, would you want to be here when it happened? Because it would be a collective experience. It would be awful in a lot of ways because we'd all be dying together, but at the same time, there would be this unification where all the things that, blight our existence, wars over territories, wars over belief systems and religion, all these things would go away. Our anger about race and all this other stuff, like all these things would dissipate because it's like, well, now we're all dying as the human race is dying off. So what a great experience, or terrible experience, I don't know, but it's interesting. I've asked that question throughout my life. I've asked that question to people just to find out what they would say, and of course the answer probably wavers day to day.
Yeah.
Some days, I might say no. I'd rather die beforehand. Some days I'd want to die when it happened. It all depends on the mood, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a bullshit question too, because it's like, but that's kind of the fun of it. You know what I mean? When you're talking about religion, like you can talk about religion with anyone or spirituality with anyone, just like talking about food or talking about sex. It's a universal thing that we've all experienced. Most of us experience, and we have our own point of view regarding it, So I love those conversations. My dad, my parents are Turkish, so a lot of my relatives are Islamic, a Muslim. My parents went to Baptist church. They had a Quran in the house and a Bible in the house. I never saw them really reading either one. But they weren't atheistic. They believed in something, but they also thought God was egalitarian. It was for everyone, and it didn't matter what your belief system was. So we had a lot of, Christian Baptist friends who would come over, and I would hear Dad and our friend Marie Chapman debating about, the afterlife. They debate about religion. It was fascinating to me, just to hear those debates, and then get into those debates later. I mean, my debates are dime store and very superficial, but again, we were trying to make a movie that could relate to a lot of people, So,
absolutely. Yeah. And then jumping back real quick, I want to wrap up with this, with the question about how I react to the end of the world. I found this is the thing that killed me the second viewing, where I literally had to pause the link because I was laughing so hard. Is when we see Father James just watching the Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, the question. We know how you feel about catastrophic events. I get you, Father James.
That's awesome. That's great. You pick up on that. That's really, really terrific, because that's a very subtle thing we were going for there. So
it tells you people who genuinely love the big kaiju experience, like they're telling you a lot about their teleological worldview. And I dig that, and I dig your movie, and I am so ecstatic that we at Chattanooga Film Festival could be part of this.
Oh my God, Jason, we're all really honored. I got to say too, if you enjoy the movie so much, it's a testament to what the performer. I think everyone knows this already, but I have to say, I am so grateful. We're grateful to be premiering and everything, and I'm very grateful that we got to make the movie, and I'm grateful for the Chattanooga Film Festival. But I mean, the stars aligning and us making this movie with that caliber of actors. Like, that is the reason why I think the movie is going to connect with people, because what they're doing, all the actors are doing, it's just I'm so humbled by it. You know what I mean? Like, to call myself the director, to show up, and for those actors to do the work they're doing, it's just, I'm a little teary-eyed because I feel just very, very, again, grateful that that they showed up and that they were available and they were brave enough to do it. But not just that, that they came and gave it so much, you know? Everybody, I think that's the thing. You have Kevin Corrigan, Max Casella, Thomas J. Ryan. They all have a lot of they have huge respect for each other. So, you know, you get those kind of people in the room, nobody wants to be the weak link, you know what I mean? And there wasn't. Everybody just kept raising the ante when it came to performances, you know? So, yeah. So, Jason, all the things you're saying are very flattering, and we really appreciate it because we're really proud of the movie, and we hope audiences get a chance to see it and it resonates with them. I think that people that see it and they watch it, you know, hopefully it's not too slow for them and they pay attention. I think those who really see it and really hear the message, which is not being preachy, it's not a message. The message is about, you know, humanity and coming together. You talk about the body and the soul, I mean, which is a big part of Catholicism and Christianity. I mean, that's the idea, you know? I mean, the pandemic is probably forcing a lot of people to get spiritual, to figure out, question what it all means. But what's happening as we come out of the pandemic, we're realizing is that, you know, we want to be in the same room with each other. We need to be in the same room with each other. Absolutely. People, you see these articles, do people want to return to work and return to the office? I mean, I think they do. I think that people want to have face-to-face contact with you. I don't know if they want to go to work at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m, but they probably want to be around each other. Yeah. You know?
They don't want to go back to cubicles. They want to go back to people.
Yeah, and you can
the key to it, I think.
And you can really feel a difference in New York too. Like people in the streets in New York and outdoors, and people want to be. They're excited to be that all the rules are lifted and they're able to actually be together again, you know? Like you can feel it in New York. There's a real energy. It's palpable. People really want to hug and not everybody, but they, you know, there's just a lot of that going on in close proximity and bars and outside in the restaurants. It's really terrific because I mean, hopefully things will stay that way. If we have to go back inside and restrictions have to happen again, it'll be catastrophic and devastating. But for right now, it feels really terrific. There's an energy, there's a bustling energy in the air that's it's really beautiful, you know? So, Jason, thank you so much. And thanks to the Chattanooga Film Festival and thanks to people watching, you know? So,
well, you have a great rest of the day and or evening, as the case may be, whenever the viewer is watching this. And thank y'all for experiencing. Please watch more stuff here at the festival and be well. Be good to each other.